So I was working on the next video when I came across a new post by Yuval Harari, and then right after that I was hit with a video of Kerry, both of which we should talk about. This is going to be a relatively quick video, but let's use this time to examine the overall agenda, the big picture stuff, just trying to keep everything in perspective. So with that being said, let's start with Yuval Harari. Populist leaders are on the rise around the world, attacking the liberal global order. They have not explained what's going to replace the order they have destroyed, and the result is the disorder, chaos, and violence we are seeing today. Well, damn, he got so much wrong in such a short statement. It's truly incredible. All he would have to do is venture out of his echo chamber to find out what populist leaders are proposing. It's not like they're hiding it. As of right now, it's basically just a return to classic liberalism. And I kinda hate debating definitions of political philosophies, but if you look up the common definition of that, I think it fits. It's essentially economics that are based in free market principles and a culture built around individual freedom. You could argue that you want a more conservative vision, or whatever your political persuasion is, but the fact is, the current populist leaders here are not that extreme in any direction. We do not have a chainsaw libertarian like Argentina. We just don't have it. The point is, though, that any of those options are a hell of a lot better than the techno-fascist order that these guys at Davos are promoting. Stakeholder capitalism equals public-private partnerships, merging the public sector, government, with the private sector, corporations. That's corporatism. The technocratic aspects include surveillance systems that are going to be built into city infrastructure. Within smart cities and 15-minute city design plans, surveillance is a core consideration. It's also a core aspect to their proposed financial system, with a reward and punishment system being inherent to its creation. It's all based upon your personal consumption. The carbon trackers, of course. However, the most draconian talking points even go beyond the 24/7 surveillance. I know. It's hard to imagine that being possible, but it is, and it revolves around their control of personal life decisions. They often talk about changing the idea of ownership. The implications of this range from banning private property, personal car ownership, and creating a service economy, by which you never really own anything at all. In fact, it's a renting economy.
Thing I will point to is a very big move that's happening at the moment from product to service. I have a friend, he says every product is a service waiting to happen. If you think about it, your cell phone, why do you want to own your cell phone? How many of you own your cell phones? How many knows if the company owns it? It's actually not a lot. You want the function, you want the service, right? Why do you want to own a cell phone if you can just lease it? And if you lease, why shouldn't you lease your refrigerator or your washing machine or your dishwasher, or why do you want to own it?
Monthly payments for everything in your life in perpetuity forever. Yeah, that's a corporation's dream come true. So tell me again, who has your best interest at heart? And it's also crazy that he's trying to blame populist leaders for the disarray and global violence. The Bushes, the Clintons, Obama, Biden, look around you. When the global order politicians are in power, it's nothing but war and death. And it is most certainly not because of populism, that's for sure. And plus, all of this chaos is directly caused by this attempted Great Reset anyway. The migration crisis, the farmer protests, and the collapse of trust. It's all manufactured and exploited. They are destroying all institutions and judicial norms to maintain control, just long enough to start the new techno-fascist order. Look, I don't know. Everything about that post was disingenuous. They certainly like to pretend that they are only doing this to save humanity from climate change. And it is bullshit. It's a narrative. As with everything, it's much more complicated. Simplicity is rarely correlated with political motivation. This is all tied into geopolitics and the rising BRIC system. The current economic system is based on the fossil fuel markets. The dollar is the global reserve. And of course, that is backed by the oil trade, the petrodollar. And the new BRIC system is in the process of gaining a foothold. They just added 5 new nations, including Saudi Arabia. They now hold a collective 55% of global GDP. That's massive. With the current nations involved, apparently the BRIC system would have a big say in global oil production. And on top of that, they plan to have their currency backed by gold. So, do you know what that means? Yeah, that means the US dollar is practically worthless. I think the West understands this threat to their power, and this is their, last-ditch effort. A quote-unquote Great Reset and a new economy. If they can switch to a carbon-based system, which is rather arbitrary, and they can get the rest of the world on board with this plan, then the West would assume control over the new system, just as they had control over the old system. It would also mean unimaginable wealth for those at the top. which is exactly how they plan to entice nations and corporations into it. The World Economic Forum plan is just the vehicle to get there, trying to coast in on this narrative of benevolence. You know, we're just trying to save the planet from climate change. Yeah, sure. So yeah, as stated, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have confirmed that they are joining BRICS. And then we got this, and I quote, "The dollar's reign as the world's reserve currency is nearly over." End of quote. That's right, global de-dollarization has begun. And personally, I think we'd be foolish to believe that the US establishment is not working on a plan to counter it. And I believe this plan has come down to two options: the Great Reset, setting up the global carbon-based system, or World War III. You might have noticed a lot of the BRIC nations have military agreements with each other too. It's the BRIC nations versus the West. And yeah, that's not good. Anyway, with that being said, let's move on to John Kerry. However, before we get into that, guess what just happened? Well, John Kerry is stepping down as climate czar, and guess who's replacing him? Yeah, John Podesta. Would you look at that? You know, it is pretty crazy to see. It's always the same players. I suppose I should probably play the entire clip first. So this is what I saw. It's only 1 minute 45 seconds, and then we'll talk about it.
Agriculture contributes about 33% of all the emissions of the world, depending a little bit on how you count it, but it's anywhere from 26 to 33. And we can't get to net zero. We don't get this job done unless agriculture is front and center as part of the solution. But with a growing population on the planet, we just crossed the threshold of 8 billion fellow citizens around the world. We just crossed that in this last year. Emissions from the food system alone are projected to cause another 0.5 degree of warming by mid-century on the current course that we are today. A 2-degree future could result in an additional 600 million people not getting enough to eat. And you just can't continue to both warm the planet while also expecting to feed it. Doesn't work. So we have to reduce emissions from the food system to keep the 1.5 degrees alive. Why do we have to keep 1.5 degrees alive? Because scientists, as a basis of physics and mathematics, not ideology and politics or party labels or anything else, as a matter of physics and mathematics and some biology and chemistry have told us these are the consequences. And we already see it happening. And almost everything they've predicted for 30 plus years now is coming true, but the problem is it's coming true faster and bigger than was in fact predicted.
John Kerry, the so-called climate czar, is determined to achieve the fabled goal of net zero, even if it means undermining the food systems of the world. And I believe this is one of the most dangerous ideas coming out of Davos. He said in that clip, and I quote, "With a growing population on the planet, we just crossed 8 billion people. The emissions from food systems alone are projected to cause another 0.5 degree of warming by 2050. Another 0.5 degree, okay." He then says that you cannot continue to warm the planet and expect to feed it. End of quote. So you might be asking, what is their brilliant plan? Well, it's essentially the same as their economic plan. Yes, that is correct. Degrowth. Now, the only way to accomplish this goal is to have complete control over the entire supply chain. In the end, they plan to eradicate local, family, independent farms in favor of this corporatist vision. You can find quote-unquote leaders from the Netherlands, Canada, and the US talking about it. The World Economic Forum hosts entire panels of experts discussing this plan for future food systems, and yeah, it's not good. They want corporate-owned megafarms. That's right, with AI automation, synthetic proteins, and lab-grown meat. However, it gets worse, and that's because to cut emissions, everybody in the world has to eat less. So the method to get there is obviously behavior modification. We just talked about it. It's a punishment-reward system that's built into the financial infrastructure. The financial system is supposed to be integrated with individual carbon tracking, and that's effectively, as we talked about, a reward-punishment mechanism. So they would be able to decide what food you're able to buy based upon that criteria. It's all about the programmable CBDC. Yes, they can restrict what you are allowed to buy and what you are not allowed to buy. If you cannot see how dystopian that's going to get, then I don't know what to tell you. Well, I guess it's simple. You just have to ask yourself one question. Would you like the carrot or the stick? So I'm going to leave you with this. I came across this quote recently. There is no such thing as coincidence in this world. The only thing is Hitsutsun. Now that is a Japanese concept. Hitsutsun is a naturally foreordained event, a state in which all other outcomes are impossible. However, if we contradict the quote, I think it applies to what we're dealing with. While the meaning of Hitsutsun is a natural event, what we are dealing with is decidedly unnatural. They consistently set the stage, create the conditions, and let the dominoes fall, leading directly to their desired outcome. Yeah, I believe this applies to every single one of their agenda items. Yes, that's right, it's my contention that they intentionally make it so other outcomes become impossible. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals or Subscribestar. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.